Hello, I'm Hannah and I'm going to show you how to look for bank reconciliation differences on your Scribe Lite account. So if we go to bank and reconcile all banks, this is where you should be once you've completed your individual reconciliations against your bank accounts. If you haven't done that yet, please take a look at the separate video. This is where you can now then run the report that checks your overall bank position and is a useful report to take to your council meetings. So here you need to have entered the audit date. So this is the date that you want to run the report to based on the cash date that you've just been using to reconcile your bank accounts. We recommend using the month end date, but it can be the statement date if that works better for you. You would then need to enter the statement balances that you've been working to and what those balances were. So remember, these need to be entered in directly based on your statement balances. Scribe will then calculate the values in the grey boxes at the bottom and show you if there's a difference. Now, as you can see, I've got a difference of £2,000. So imagine if that happens to you, similar difference, then this is the things you need to check. So firstly, if it is the first reconciliation that you have completed in the financial year on Scribe, then you would just need to check that the opening bank balances have been entered and they've been entered correctly. If you have a really large difference, then it's almost certainly because you don't have any opening bank balances. To check that, you can go to Setup and go to Bank Balances and just make sure that you do indeed have opening bank balances against your bank accounts. If you haven't, then you need to get them entered in. If there are there, just check that they are correct. Remember, they need to be the balances from your end of year bank rec, so your year-end bank rec, 31st of March from the previous year. Now, normally, this will simply be the statement balance as that date for each account, but if you had unpresented items, these will need to have been taken account of. And also remember that if those unpresented items had not appeared on the bank statement by the time you've done this first reconciliation, it would be correct for your reconciliation to be out by the value of the unpresented items that have not yet been reconciled. There is a separate help guide that talks a bit more about what that means and how you deal with that, but that would be correct if the difference is the unpresented items that as of yet are not reconciled. And remember, that is only true when you first start with us. So if I return to bank and reconcile all banks, assuming that we're happy that our opening bank balances are correct, the next couple of things to check is firstly that the audit date you've entered is correct. So remember that if you put the audit date as I have at the 30th of April, Scribe will run the report at that date and ignore anything that has been done beyond that point. So if you've cashed things in this example in May, they won't be included. So make sure you've been consistent with your cash date and you've got the audit date set correctly. If you want to check your cash dates, you can go and have a look at transactions and payments. As you can see, I don't have many transactions, so I can easily see that I've only used the 30th of April, which is absolutely fine. But you can sort if you click that column header. So you can just check that you haven't got any cash dates beyond the audit date you're running to. So if you do find you've made an error and used a cash date incorrectly, you can click into the transaction, untick the cached box, click save, and then repeat the reconcile process, making sure you're using the correct cash date to apply to the transaction. Remember also you can check receipts as well. And again, I've just got one and that's fine. So again, returning to reconcile all banks. The third thing then to check is just to make sure that we have entered our statement balances correctly. So these will be retained from the last month that you did it on Scribe. So you need to obviously make sure that you update them to be the one that you're working to, the reconciliation that you've just done. Remember, they're not Scribe calculated balances, so you need to enter these figures in and obviously just make sure that you've entered them in correctly. So once you've confirmed all of those things, if you still have a difference, we now need to move on to looking at Scribe because it looks like something is not quite right with one or more transactions on there. So we can run the report by clicking Save and Next. The report will appear. And as we saw on the previous screen, we have a difference of the £2,000. Now, do also remember that if you're running this and you don't have a difference, we strongly recommend that you save the report so that you end up with 12 months of reconciliations that obviously reconcile. So if you do have any issues, you also have these to refer back to see if you can see what's gone awry since you last reconciled. Now, the next thing to check at this point is to see if you have any unpresented items and whether they're correct to be there. So as you can see, I have got an unpresented payment of £2,000. So to check my unpresented items, I can go to Filter, select the relevant one. So in this case, I only have payments, and then click View Report, which will show as it does. So here we can see I've got a bank transfer from my savings account to the current account of £2,000. So it looks likely in this scenario that I've simply not reconciled this transaction, which is causing my difference. So obviously I'd need to go and check against the statement, but it looks like this might be the reason for the error. Now, if you don't have any unpresented items, or you've checked them and they're not the reason for the difference, and they're correct to be unpresented, you would then need to move on again. So the next best place to look is by going to Bank Reports, and then we've got the option of Accounts/any bank. So these reports will show you all the transactions that have been entered against the bank account, and it automatically runs for your current account firstly, and also the cash date. So we can see a running balance and we can see exactly what's gone through. So it might be just a case of needing to get out your statement and checking the transactions against the scribe report to see if there are any anomalies. You can see at the bottom what the bank statement should be. So obviously if that's correct, this isn't the account with the problem. You can go to Filter to move between your other accounts. So if I look at my savings account, when I've selected a new option, I just click View Report to update. Again, I can see exactly what's gone on. And as we discovered, the £2,000 transfer hasn't been cashed. So again, this does look like my error. As you move through the financial year, obviously the transactions will build up. So you also have the ability to filter by the date. So this will apply to the cash date. So if, for example, you move through and everything's reconciling and you get to August and everything was fine and suddenly September's not reconciling, you could run the date range of September. That will show you all the transactions with a cash date within September, and it's a case of checking it back to the statement to see if something has gone awry. So either something's been missed off, not entered onto Scribe, something has got the wrong value, or maybe something's been cashed when it shouldn't, or vice versa. So it's just checking to the statement to make sure everything matches up. Once you've identified what the reason the error is for, you need to obviously go and correct it. So if it's a case of a missing transaction, you'd need to go and enter it in the normal way. If it's one that's been entered, say, for the wrong value, you can amend it accordingly by clicking into the relevant entry, making the changes and saving. If it's something that's been cashed when it shouldn't have been, you can obviously uncache it. Or if it's something that hasn't yet been cashed, you can go and resolve it. So let's just return to bank and reconcile. So in this scenario, it's my savings account that was causing me the problem. So I can go back to my savings account, put in my date that I want to update for, that I've got something missing, enter in the value of from my bank statement, and just go through, and there is a transfer that we've identified that I'd missed from reconciling. So you would need to tick anything off that's missing or update accordingly and save, and then it's just a case of returning to Reconcile All Banks and making sure that that's resolved it, which it has. It's no longer got a difference, it's no longer in a big red box. So then we can save and next to update our report, which is obviously showing correctly. And as I said, making sure we keep a copy. So we can save report at this point, which will keep a record of everything that we've done in terms of the balances that we've entered, and then we can save it. So there we have it in the list. Now I have 2 examples here, but obviously you would end up hopefully with 12 of these at the end of the month. And again, that can be really useful if everything's reconciling and something then goes wrong. You can look back at what you've done previously to make sure nothing has gone awry. So I hope that's helpful, and thanks very much.